So, here at the Abbey, after lunch, which is the main meal of the day, we do some prayers and then a text. We recite a text, a different text every day, like the Heart Sutra or the 8 verses of thought training. So, on Mondays, the text we recite is the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas. It's a really beautiful text, one of His Holiness's favorites, and it's full of advice for aspiring bodhisattvas like ourselves. So, verse 21 of this text is about attachment, how to work with attachment. So it says, sensual pleasures are like salt water. The more you indulge, the more thirst increases. Abandon at once those things which breed clinging attachment. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So I usually feel a little uncomfortable when I'm reciting this verse. And I don't have so much trouble with the first 2 lines, the idea that, if we follow thoughts of desire, then it's like drinking salt water. It just makes us more thirsty. So the Buddha talked about this, Shantideva talked about it, I talk about it when I'm teaching, and it makes complete sense. I can see plenty of examples in my own experience and in the world around me. It's the third line that I have trouble with. Abandon at once those things which breed clinging attachment. Chocolate, ice cream, sweets, pizza, nice tea. I have to abandon those things. I can't have them anymore. So this is challenging for me, and I'm sure for many other people as well. As monastics, we take vows to abstain from sex, alcohol, drugs, watching movies, listening to music. And I mean, that can be challenging. It was a little hard in the early days, in my own experience, but I kind of got used to it. So I don't have so much trouble with that anymore. But then food, we don't have a vow to abstain from food. In a way, it would be easy just to not eat. Then you wouldn't have to deal with that attachment. But we can't do that. We need to eat. So what I've observed in my experience, and I think many other monastics as well, that all our desires, all our cravings go to food. And also when people do retreat, and there you also don't have access to these other things. So food becomes like super important. But it's been something I've struggled with my whole life. I think my default mode, or mood rather, when I was young was unhappy. I was unhappy most of the time. And I think as a very small child, I discovered that candy makes you happy. So, yeah, a little bit of respite from the usual unhappiness. So I became a candy addict when I was quite young. I would even sometimes steal nickels from my mom's drawer to go and buy a candy bar at the store. True confessions there. So, I mean, there's worse things to be attached to, although it certainly had consequences for my teeth and being a chubby teenager at the time when super thin supermodels like Twiggy became the norm, and I had a lot of mental suffering that my body didn't look like that. And so there were definite problems. And yeah, so it's something I've struggled with all my life. And then when I became a nun, I was actually grateful for having precepts. I mean, even the practice of keeping the 8 precepts is very helpful. Just eat one meal a day, and that can kind of curb those impulses to eat all day long. And then also having the monastic vow, I really took it quite seriously to, not eat after midday, and I found that helpful, but not completely. I mean, you can still, eat a lot in one meal. And then with sweets, I remember in the early days when I was, shortly after I ordained, and I was living at Kopan, I thought, now I really don't need candy. It's not necessary. It's more like a luxury food, and it's not even good for me. So I'm just going to stop eating candy. No more candy. Stop altogether. And I don't know how long I managed to do that, but I remember this one day somebody gave me a candy bar, And I was sitting in my room with this candy bar on the table in front of me. And inside, there was just like this battle going on between my attachment and my resolution to not eat candy anymore. And physically, I was shaking. Yeah, I was just. So finally, I gave in and ate the candy bar, and I probably felt horribly guilty afterwards. But I also realized that's not the way to overcome attachment. Yeah, you don't overcome attachment just by not eating it, not doing it anymore. I had to work on my mind. So I've been working on it. I'm still trying. it's still it's still a problem, but much better. But not as bad as. I mean, one thing I found was that over the years, just practicing more, studying more, practicing more, getting more experience in working with my mind, and in particular, finding greater peace and contentment and cultivating more positive qualities like love and compassion and altruism, caring for others. Just having a better state of mind overall has really helped to decrease the reliance on food for happiness. It's kind of a lower quality experience of pleasure and happiness compared to the happiness that comes from meditation and developing positive states of mind. So I've kind of noticed that it has decreased on its own just through inner contentment. But still, somehow I've always managed to have sweets like chocolate around. When I was in Singapore, it was easy. I must have, mentioned one day that I liked chocolate. And from that time on, I was inundated with gifts of chocolate. There was always chocolate around. And then after that, before coming to the Abbey, for many years, I was living on my own and cooking for myself, and that meant shopping for myself. So somehow it always happened that chocolate and cookies would find their way into my shopping basket. So again, I had chocolate and cookies all the time. And then when I came here to the Abbey, I was actually worried about that because we don't go shopping. We can't go shopping here. And we can only eat what's given to us by our very kind, generous lay followers. So the situation here is sometimes there's chocolate on the snack table and sometimes not. Last Christmas, there was lots of chocolate. Oh, lots of chocolate made its way into the Abbey. But sometimes there isn't. Days, weeks go by without any chocolate. So I was kind of worried what was going to happen in my mind. Was I going to manage? Was I going to have a meltdown? Was I going to have chocolate withdrawals? But fortunately, it hasn't happened. I've been okay. I mean, I know intellectually I don't really need it. It's just the emotional thing, like the mind does say, I need it. I can't be happy without it. So it's been okay. I've been able to survive without chocolate. But I still like it when it's there. And Venerable Chudra knows this very well. She sends me chocolate bars sometimes. But anyway, I'm sure I'm not the only one who has this problem, and everybody has their own kind of particular food likes and dislikes. So I think the point of this verse, I mean, if you can abandon something, if you are able to do that, something that you have attachment and craving for, then that's fine. But if you can't completely give it up, just work on decreasing the attachment. I was actually looking at Kensur Jampa Tekchog's commentary to see what he said about this verse. And he mainly talked about alcohol and meat. I suppose those are big problems for Tibetans. But he didn't mention chocolate. Usually Tibetans aren't interested in sweets. But he did say, at the end that the real problem isn't the object, but rather our attitude, our state of mind. And so that's what we need to work on. And there are antidotes. I don't always use them, but when I do, they do help. For example, impermanence. I mean, just thinking about how long does that pleasure last? A few seconds, a few minutes, and then it's over. So that helps to reduce this narrative in the mind that says, I need that to be happy. That makes me happy. Well, is that really true? Yeah, and just doing a reality check. I mean, is this object really that wonderful, really that fantastic? It was interesting to read Lama Zopa Rinpoche's biography, The Laudo Lama, and he talked about his first encounter with chocolate when he was just a little kid living up in the mountains, and some, people from Switzerland, trekkers, mountain climbers, came to his remote valley, and they were handing out chocolate to the little kids. He'd never seen it before, and he thought, kind of ugly. I mean, when you think about it, it isn't really that attractive. It looks like other things which aren't so. And they're just not used to eating sweets. They're used to eating, salty and chili and, spicy kind of foods, but they're not used to sweet foods. So he didn't even like it in the beginning. So that was really interesting to think about how somebody else looks at that food that you find so delicious. So that helps too, just to, do a reality check, what your mind is saying about that object, and is it really that great, really that fantastic? So find a middle way. I think the best is the middle way. Don't just, completely restrict yourself, because I don't think that works. And don't indulge either, because that doesn't work either. But somewhere in the middle, enjoy it when it's there, but not suffer too much when it's not there. And work on the mind. Use the antidotes to attachment to decrease that painful state of mind. Okay, so that's just sharing a little bit of my experience, and I hope it's helpful.